Can you see me? Oh, there we go. Okay, this is an explanation of the quoting and paraphrasing slide or PowerPoint or whatever the heck they call it now that I went over in class. This will explain how to quote and paraphrase properly. Hope you can see all this. I might need to move myself. Does that work better? Okay, so first you got to know the difference between quoting and paraphrasing. Quoting is writing what your source says word for word. You put it in quotation marks, and then you cite it. If you paraphrase, you put it in your own words, but the information is the same. Okay, you still cite it, and I'll explain how to do that. So when do you quote, when do you paraphrase? And I want to see both in the paper. You really need to know how to do both. That's a skill you need to take to college because they're going to expect that you can do that you know how to do that. So for quoting, and it's written right here, if it's really well written, if it's an expert that's telling you, giving you the information, controversial, dramatic, it's just, you'll just know when you see a good quote, like, oh, I want those words in my paper, right? Versus paraphrasing, they're just facts, statistics, general information. Most information kind of falls under that category. So you really should see a lot more paraphrasing than I should see quoting. You might see one quote per paragraph. There might even be a paragraph that doesn't have a quote. It might be just lots of paraphrasing. You better have some sources, though. You should have citations in every paragraph, at least every body paragraph, not intro and not the conclusion. And so how do you do it? If you're quoting, well, that's no good. If you're quoting your, I could do this. No, this doesn't work. All right, well, I'm continuing anyway. So if you're quoting, you need to connect your quote to a sentence. You cannot have an isolated quote. It needs to say, like, he said, comma, quote, at the very least. Best case scenario is you go to the resources that I put in the the prompt, and you use he said, she said, right? Or I say, they say, or whatever the heck it is. That gives you much more interesting ways to set up a quote. But at the very least, he writes, comma, quote, right? Don't just end a sentence and then put the quote in, because that's an isolated quote that points off. Copy the quote word for word and cite it. If you're doing paraphrasing, you need to change the sentence structure. You need to change the words that you use, but the meaning's exactly the same. Okay, you cite everything. It's not from your own brain, as long as it's not common knowledge. If it's Kermit the Frog is a frog, you don't need to cite that because everybody knows that, right? I mean, I think everybody does. Who's Kermit the Frog? Why is this not working? There we go. Oh, great. Let's go ahead and move me down here. Come on, buddy. There we go. That's much better. Okay, so when you cite quotations, okay, this is word for word in quotation marks. You can put the author before or after the quote. You must put page numbers after if you have a page number. If this is a book, a text that you're quoting. All the other information, the article title, the author credentials, everything comes before the quote. And I'll give you examples of that. Okay. Don't write any quotes down that are longer than 4 lines. And I mean 4 lines when you write them out. Okay. Not 4 lines in the web page. Okay. So here's some examples. Move me back up here. But come on. Over here. That's good. Okay, so Jim Thuman, author of 14 best-selling books on wizards, writes in a Time magazine article called "Wizards Rule the World," comma, quote, "Wizards have become the single most important creature of our houses." So let's start from the beginning. We've got the author, okay? Then I've got his credentials. This is why you should believe him, okay? I've got where the article is that you are citing is coming from, and I've got the title of the article. All of these things are good to have in the intro to your quote. Then I have a comma inside the quotation marks, and of course the title of the article is also in quotation marks, and then the quote itself is in quotation marks. no punctuation at the end unless it's a period or an exclamation point. Then you cite it. This is from a text source, so it's page 14, and then period goes after the citation. Okay. If there's no citation, then you have to put a period and it goes inside quotation marks. That's how it goes. And then my second example is in an article entitled Channing Tatum is Hollywood's Last Action Star. Again, that's the title of the article. It's in quotation marks. And this should say Los Angeles Times journalist or something like that. States, comma, quote, Channing Tatum has the biggest abs. So in this one, I didn't put the author at the beginning of the article, so I have to, or before the quote, so I have to put it at the end. Okay, it goes inside parentheses. That's your parenthetical citation, and so you put the period at the end. Okay, so that's good enough. Okay, I wonder if there's a way to shrink me. Can I make myself smaller? Ooh, hey, look at that. That's exciting. Okay, so that's quoting. How do you paraphrase? You've got to take what's written here and put it in your own words. So the paragraph I took is Wired magazine. Not quite 2 years ago, Netflix launched simultaneously in 130 new countries. It now operates nearly everywhere in the world. With that expansion has come explosive international growth, along with the challenge of how best to introduce its homegrown favorites like Stranger Things to an audience that spans all the way to the upside down and back. So how do I paraphrase that? How do I put that in my own words? Number one, only include the information pertinent to your essay. There's a lot of different information in this paragraph. It's not, I probably don't want to use all of it. So people are, a lot of times they just want, well, I need this whole paragraph and I need to paraphrase it. No, just the things that you need, okay? Avoid the exact same words, and I'll talk about that in a second. Avoid the exact same sentence structure. Don't just copy and paste it and change some of the words, okay? And then keep the exact same meaning. So when I'm looking over this paragraph, the words that really stick out, like it's okay if you use the same words like that are articles like a and the, if you use prepositions, use pronouns, like of course you can use those words. Those are super common. But if I look at this, I'm looking at operates, expansion, explosive, international growth, homegrown favorites, like there's a bunch of words that you really don't, upside down, that you don't want to use. So try to change those out, but do not just copy and paste it and then change a few words. So if you look here, with that development has come fantastic ubiquitous expansion. That's just copy and pasted from with that expansion has come explosive international growth. It's the exact same sentence structure. I've just changed some of the words, right? Along with the test of how to acquaint its best shows, along with the challenge of how to introduce its homegrown favorites. It's the same. You can tell that it's just copied. So don't do that. Like Stranger Things to a group of people who spread all the way to China and back. Like Stranger Things to an audience that spans all the way to the upside down and back. It's a copy, right? And I'm going to know you copied it, and that's points off. So don't do that. So what's the best way to do that? Well, first I skip the first two sentences because that's not what I'm focusing on. I'm focusing on how do they target the audience and make new audiences like their old shows. So basically what I'm saying is, as people from more countries begin subscribing to Netflix, the company will need to figure out how to market their popular shows such as Stranger Things to new audiences. That's pretty much what they're saying here. It's just in my own words, but you can tell it looks very different than the original. So that's how to paraphrase properly. Okay, then we get to how do you cite. Here are the general rules. Put whatever shows up first in the works cited in parentheses after you paraphrase. So you paraphrase it, and then in parentheses afterward, whatever shows up first in the works cited. It really should be the author. If you have a reliable source, you should have an author. If you don't, then you're going to have the title in quotation marks, so put it in quotation marks. Okay, and then followed by the page number if applicable. It's probably not going to be applicable. Cite everything you write down that's not from your own brain. Cite every chunk of information. So if you take information from a source and put it into one sentence, cite after the one sentence. After two sentences, cite after the second sentence, not after both sentences. After 5 sentences, don't do that. Then put it after the 5th sentence. Okay. So if sentence 1 or 2 is from source A, then cite after sentence 2. If sentence 1 and 3 are from source A, but there's a sentence in the middle that's your own opinion, then you have to source both, because that tells me that the sentence is from source A, the sentence is source A, but there's a sentence in the middle that's from somewhere else. Okay. Cite quotes and paraphrasing separately. Darn face. Get out of here, face. Ooh, can I put it like over here? Look at that. Bam. I'm moving all over the place. That's amazing. In any case, cite quotes and paraphrasing separately, even if they are from the same source. So if you have back-to-back sentences, one is paraphrasing and one is, quoting, you have to cite both of them, even though they're back-to-back. 2 sentences back-to-back that are both paraphrased, just cite the second source. If you have a paraphrase sentence from source A and then followed immediately by a quote sentence from source A, you have to cite them both in parentheses. Okay. Here's my made-up example. Now, the main thing with this is that you should just be able to eyeball this whole paragraph and kind of see what's going on. So this tells me that you're citing a lot, which is good. I see 1, 2, 3, because there's a citation, 4, 5. I've got 5 citations. So there's 5 times in this paragraph that you took information from an outside source and put it in there. Okay. This source is from a book. It's paraphrased, right? Because it's got page numbers. This sentence, these 2 sentences are from a website because there's no page number. And it's paraphrased. Then I've got a quote from a book because I've got a page number. Then I've got, looks like paraphrasing from a website, and then a quote from the same website. And then lots of my opinion, throughout, right? So we start here. Mr. Kramer is a villain because of the unfair way he grades essays. That's an opinion, so you don't need to cite that. Mr. Kramer's freshman class turned in an essay for the book Twilight on July 27th. It's a fact. That's why it's paraphrased. And it's from Lady Gaga in a book that she wrote apparently on page 22. The paper needed to be turned in to turnin.com. A hard copy was also due on the due date. These are all facts. So that's why it's not quoted. They're paraphrased, and they're both of these sentences are from the same source. They're from Ryan Gosling's website. This is all fake, by the way. You know that, right? And then here's an opinion. First of all, the fact that a paper must be turned in twice is ridiculous. Like, that's your opinion, so you don't need to cite that. The facts turned in on hard copy and the facts turned in on turn.com are exactly the same. It's kind of a, common knowledge, so you don't need to cite that. In his book, Mr. Kramer, and I've italicized the name of the book, Mr. Kramer is the lying jerk. Donald Trump states, quote, Mr. Kramer's grading system is what's keeping America from being great. That's a bad joke I need to take out. But in any case, I've got the page number there. It's in quotes. I've got the credentials. I got the author. I have everything that I need. The worst part of Mr. Kramer's grading system is that he actually reads papers instead of just giving grades based on how much he likes students. That's your opinion, the worst part, right? If a student earns an F, it is because the student did not follow the prompt. That's a fact, so it's paraphrased by Benedict Cumberbatch. An angry expert in the field of grading states, quote, if a student does not follow the prompt, he should still earn an A. I mean, come on, that's just simple economics here. Now, this is from the exact same author, and you would think that you don't need to cite the first time, but remember, the first one's from paraphrasing and the second one's a quote, so you always treat those separately. And because I didn't put, I said an angry expert in the field of grading, because I didn't state the name of the author at the beginning, I stated at the end, okay, in parentheses, so you got to do that. This assessment is correct. The tyranny of Mr. Kramer needs to end. Those are both, quotes. I mean opinions. So you don't need to cite your opinion. Okay. That's the PowerPoint. If you have any other questions, please let me know. Peace. Really? I hit the wrong button. That is so embarrassing.